The Quick Check Toolbox is a great way to have guidelines of what you should be doing in Wikidfile as an average user, right? All shops are different. This is just Wikidfile's recommendations for the average shop of what they could be doing in Wikidfile. So let's go over each item in here in the toolbox. So we have two items that we believe the average shop should be checking daily. One is PO numbers for review. The other is ROs for review. PO numbers for review are any uploaded part invoices where the PO number on that part invoice does not tie to any real RO number in your shop management system. So in other words, we have parts purchased, but we have no idea where they are. We can't tie it to an RO where they were sold. We don't see credits. Where did these parts go? Did they get stolen out back? Who knows? So great thing to spot check and make sure you do not have a process issue or a personnel issue with tying POs on invoices to repair orders. The other is ROs for review. So this is kind of like one of the golden views in Wikidfile. This is going to be for those parts on invoices that are tied to ROs. Do they actually end up getting sold on the RO, or do they at least end up getting credited? And if not, they're going to fall under an RO for review. So all of these are going to be ROs with potential loss. In fact, if I open this up, you would see it takes me right to the report, and all of these ROs in this report have some sort of potential loss because, again, there's parts tied to these ROs by PO, but we don't see where the parts were actually sold or credited. So you can open up these ROs to take a further look into those. Great thing to spot check daily. Next is weekly. We have uncredited cores. So cores are obviously a fan favorite among our shops. They obviously want to make sure that all cores are getting returned. That's just easy money to lose if you're not returning your cores, right? So what Wikidfile does is we can pick out the word core on an invoice, and we expect that core charge to have an associated credit memo with that. So if we see cores that are not credited, then we throw them in this uncredited core report for you, where you can go ahead and obviously we have the part or the core details here, but you can open up the invoice and even see more detail. Make sure you get those returned and the credit uploaded. Here's a little secret. These cores, uncredited cores, are actually already caught between these two reports. They're either going to be under an invalid PO, or obviously since core charges are never passed on to the repair order, they're going to be under a flagged RO under potential loss. So if you're already going through these two reports, you don't need to go under uncredited cores. This is just a separate view. We found a lot of shops just love looking at a dedicated core list. But again, if you're going through these two reports already, there's no need to go through uncredited cores and double dip unless you want to see that dedicated view. So lastly, we have two items under monthly. One is also another fan favorite. What Wikidfile does with statements. You can review your statements and your statement vendors. So this is the only report here that actually does not take you to a report. It takes you to the statement vendor view because we found a lot of shops just love having this view of all their statement vendors listed here, and then a quick percentage of how much of the totals from that vendor that they owe are actually matched to an invoice or a credit. In other words, how much documentation they have uploaded for that vendor. So obviously you have the ability to open up these vendors, see a list of the statement pages for this specific vendor, and then open up the statement page and make sure you have all your invoices and credits uploaded. If you do not, you would see a red X signifying that you don't have the invoice or credit uploaded. This is one that we put under monthly, obviously, because most people have statement vendors that give them statements every month, right? So check it monthly. Last one we have is credits not applied to a statement. This is a very underrated view, but what we found is even though you get a paper copy of a credit memo when you return a part, vendors don't always actually credit you back. They don't always give you that credit directly to your bank account, or if they're a statement vendor, they don't always apply it to a statement. So we have this credits not applied to statement report where we want you to monitor this and double check this monthly and see, hey, we have paper copies of credit memos, but Wikidfile does not see where they were actually applied on your latest statement for this vendor or applied back to your bank account if you have Plaid integrated. So this is another great thing to spot check and make sure you're actually getting credited. That is all Wikidfile recommends you to do as the basic, average user. This is just a basic guideline that can spread across the blanket of security over your shop as wide as possible. Of course, there's even more you can do outside of the toolbox in custom reports. We have a lot more ready-made reports here that we've created. Some are on that toolbox. There are others that even expand further from that toolbox, like if you want to see vendors charging you shipping, tax, deleted ROs open longer than 30 days. You'll find a lot more ready-made reports here. But again, the toolbox is the basic, it's what we recommend. One more thing I do want to touch on this toolbox page is on the right-hand side, we also do supply Pro Tools. These are just other items in Wikidfile you can check and enhance your experience with Wikidfile. So again, custom reports I just talked about. You can see even more reports than what's on the toolbox, but you can also get email alerts through trackers. You can organize report data with folders, and you can even assign tasks to your team members from report data on your reports. So if you want to do that, you can create a task.